Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Hey there, hi there, ho there. I haven't said that in ages. I hope you're all healthy, doing well. I apologize, a little bit of a dry cough. They say this Omicron just hangs on and hangs on. And thank you for your well wishes, by the way, very much. Once again, it constantly seems to be something I need to prove to myself. My practice helps me sail through things that otherwise would be much more debilitating. So here I am, feeling quite well. So thank you. I got an email early this morning asking about a section, or actually the entirety, of chapter 14 of the Lotus Sutra. And as most of you know, I did a whole playlist called Lotus Lectures, where I read through each and every one of the Threefold Lotus Sutra. So all three chapters of the Innumerable Meanings, which is the opening to the Lotus Sutra, and the final chapter beyond the 28th of on Bodhisattva Universal Virtue, goes by different names depending on the translation. But it's known as the closing chapter of the Lotus Sutra, as well as every single chapter of the Lotus Sutra, reading through them and interrupting it's not like audiobooks. Although if you download the podcast, now that I think of it, it would be like an audio book. But what I meant to say is that as I'm reading through a sentence, a paragraph, a page, I'm constantly interrupting with a modern elucidation of or a simplification in words that we modern folk can understand. Sometimes there's a term I've been using a lot lately is it can seem like word salad. You can kind of get lost in just trying to read through the verbiage and the vernacular, and at the end of it, you just sort of get swirly-eyed, kind of stunned. Oh, what did all that mean, right? So one of my principal purposes in this channel is to de-gobbledygook these translations and all of these words to distill the meaning and create maybe an ancillary vernacular around what Shakyamuni's teachings are. And so when this gentleman, one of our Sangha, wrote me asking about this section of the 14th chapter in most modern translations, in the H. Kern translation from the late 1800s, I think it was the 11th or 12th, wasn't in the collection of 28 chapters yet. So in that rendition, it's the 13th chapter. So anyway, it is the chapter that also is known by various names: Happy Life, Easy Practice. What was the one that the translation he used? I think is Bertrand. peaceful practices. Again, there's that cultural bias depending on the translator, right? All of these scholars, they try their best to get at the meaning without deviating much from the words they're translating to give the most clear or accurate translation of the Chinese or Sanskrit or one of the many languages that the teachings have been translated into. And to their credit, I think they all, the more versions I've read of the Lotus Sutra, the more I see the consistencies in them all. But their cultural biases, they peek through quite obviously, especially older ones where their rhetoric, their understanding of the world from childhood has been fed with their cultural stigmata, dogmas, what have you, and so they use that language from the Church of England or the Italian Roman Catholic Church or wherever these translators come from, or Japan. And so they use the words that they're familiar with using to describe a certain way of thinking, being, knowing, right? But to a more modern Westerner, those words are trigger words. And they make us think with the rhetoric that we're inculcated with all the time. You know, in North America, we're very proud to say that we're agnostic as far as the imposition on society. But just look at the United States. From 1957 on, the words "God bless America" or "In God we trust" and the God thing, the Christian thing, got infused into something wasn't any part of the original Constitution or the Founding Fathers' rhetoric. They specifically made the First Amendment non-religious in nature, to be sure that religion could be practiced, but it would not be governed. We would not be governed by, as an arm of government by the people, for the people, that it wouldn't represent a religious authority. And yet today, the United States is known as the Christian nation. It's a conundrum, isn't it? It's part of our upbringing, even if we resist it. We resist it because it is part of our upbringing. So it's no mystery how it ends up infusing rhetoric from 3,000-year-old oral teachings. It shouldn't be there. It sometimes really annoys me, but I'm keen to clear that misappropriation up. And so I say all of that, not to rail against religion, although, but because we read these translations, which in this, it's ironic, the title seems so sublime and butterfly-like, peaceful practices or a happy life. In actuality, the chapter is all about prohibitions put on a bodhisattva. If you, as a practitioner of Buddhism, Lotus Sutra Buddhism, want to course through the world as a bodhisattva, in other words, with a Buddha mind constantly present in your exposure to the environment, your environment, the environment, as an influence and an inculcator of influence with the Buddha mind, then you must be representative of that Buddha mind. If you call yourself a bodhisattva and you practice very hard and you frequent strip joints and football matches, then your example of a Buddha mind is not correct. your example of a Buddha mind is being influenced by a very banal human samsaric activity rather than being influenced by your being a bodhisattva. There would have to be a very special circumstance made there. And so the 14th or 13th chapter lists a tremendous amount of different things that, just a little bit from his email. They should not associate closely with rulers, princes, high ministers, or heads of office, or those who compose works of secular literature, hazardous amusement, critics of poetry, not poetry, or writers of books extolling the heretics, and not with hazardous amusement, boxing, wrestling, clowns, and various jugglers or other actors or other engaging in various kinds of illusionary entertainment, or with persons engaged in raising pigs, sheep, chickens, or dogs, or those who engage in hunting or fishing, or those with evil conduct. Evil. There's that word evil. That's just not a Buddhist word. We can redefine it in order to allow for us using it, but technically, it's not a Buddhist word. We can say that in Buddhism, what we can infer from the word evil is any activity that either creates a misunderstanding or a complete blockage or a diversion from our goal of Buddha. Now, if you start to think of it that way, what we really are reading in this chapter of the Lotus Sutra is prohibitions against influences that want to entice us into samsara, which means leaving our Buddha mind, or to keep us from accessing and living in our Buddha mind, therefore no longer Bodhisattva, or act as a complete blockage toward our attainment of Buddha mind. This in Buddhism you could interpret as evil, but really what it is an enemy of enlightenment. That would be more Buddhist terminology. In other words, it stands in the way of the Buddha mind and therefore your experience of Buddha mind. And when you can't experience Buddha mind, you no longer are a bodhisattva. You are a samsaric being influenced by samsara, the world of desires, attachment, anger, animality, all of those lower six worlds, right? So that's what that chapter is about. If you want to credit yourself with the mission of coursing in this life as a bodhisattva, then these prohibitions are what you need do in order to not fall from that coursing of bodhisattva. Now, I will make the suggestion that if you want to know, see, this is the wonder of study to me, is that you can read that in the Lotus Sutra and think, wow, rules, right? But you can read in Perfection of Wisdom. You can read in the Surangama, the Satipatthana, or the Hinayana. You can read in the first teachings of Shakyamuni, the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Noble Path. And you'll hear the very same things. It's a consistency from beginning to end. It's just that in the Lotus Sutra, it takes on more gravitas because it specifically calls out the Bodhisattva, which is the ultimate practice of Lotus Sutra Buddhism, to course in the Bodhisattva life. So in answering I made several points. The first one being, if a person is coursing the world of samsara as a bodhisattva, as I was just saying, it is imperative to behave as a constant example of the goal of Buddhist practice, specifically the Dharma of the Law Flower teachings, the Lotus Sutra. Now, there are a couple of, these are almost like a worn-out song that you hear on the radio all the time. You go, I liked that song a while ago now. Sex, violence, betrayal, manipulation. These are just very core concepts from the word go that Shakyamuni identified as very dangerous to be around, certainly to associate with, and you should have nothing to do with if you're going to pursue a life of enlightenment. And certainly, as a bodhisattva, these are the very tripwires, the very deeply ingrained samsaric manipulations, illusions, that can take you right out of Buddha mind, and you just end up floating in samsara. You're no longer an enlightened or awakened person. You are, boom, samsara. That's not to say you can't have sex. Nichiren wrote a Gosho about husband and wife. Suggested that they might try chanting with one another as they're copulating. You see, once again, Nichiren especially points out to us that Buddhism is about attitude, about intent. He didn't say don't enjoy sex. He said sex is incredibly coercive toward simple pleasure, carnal, samsaric pleasure. If that's why you're having sex, then you're getting in your own way. You're descending into samsara. You're no longer keeping a Buddha mind. But as Nichiren suggests, if you're having sex with your wife, a legal union, we can argue about the legality, but certainly a union specifically designed to create offsprings, lineage, then there's a higher use for that activity that is amazing in and of itself, to create a fortune child with every opportunity and health that it could possibly have. Well, that's a different way to think about this exalted experience of sex, congress, to achieve another amazing being into the Buddha mind world, into the teachings of the Dharma. That's noble. So you see, attitude, intent, it's everything. And there's a hint of this in this very chapter, because even after admonishing all of these things, shouldn't have sex, shouldn't be around a sexy woman, shouldn't be around shouldn't be in a woman alone in a house or a room. Always bring a Buddhist friend with you to disperse that energy. It's so strong. Especially don't try to teach the Dharma just to ingratiate yourself with the woman so perhaps you'll have sexual favor. This is how the human mind works, isn't it? Yeah, Shakyamuni was no dummy. He understood the powerful draw of some samsaric urges. They're part of being human. But as soon as he listed a bunch of these things, like even the meat thing, a lot of people get hung up on Buddhists can't eat meat. And it's not about the meat itself. It's about, and he makes this point in the Lotus Sutra as well as other places, that it's the hunters and the herders, the people who produce meat for profit. They do not understand or respect the life they are taking. They're just taking life, equating it with wealth and power. That's deeply samsaric. But if an animal is sacrificed to feed a family and there's abundance that can be shared with bodhisattvas, that's okay, because the spirit, the respect of that animal that the butchers or the raisers of that animal have for the life that they're taking in order to subsist their own lives, not for profit, not for gain, simply for subsistence. That's not a problem. Once again, it's the attitude and the intent that's everything. Stay away from rulers and princes and all of that kind of thing. People that wield power and manipulations. The world of anger is deeply within all of this. And it's important that you understand that the world of anger isn't about, that's not the world of anger. The world of anger is, how can I take advantage of you? If I deceive you this way, can I make you work to my benefit? If I deceive others, can I get rid of you as an obstacle to my power, my wealth? Anger is backstabbing, manipulative, strategizing. That's a very intoxicating samsaric place. And what does it affect most? Attitude and intent. So as you read through all of these miscellaneous things, as you may go back and read, I did videos on all of the chapters. You can there's a two-part videos on the 14th chapter, and I pick from different translations. But I don't mind going over it now because it's been several years since I did that series. So, yeah, this gentleman likes to box. It's an activity he likes to do. And so I pointed out to him that Shakyamuni isn't saying don't box. What he's saying is that in order to be a boxer, there's a tremendous amount of physical conditioning. And physical conditioning also conditions the mind. And herein lies the tripwire. If what you do as a boxer is train and train your physical body to be more alert, like the Shaolin did with the sinew I forget the word, the exercises that Bodhidharma brought to them to bring more health, more stamina to them so that their meditation could be attentive and meritorious. Yeah, there's no prohibition against that. But if you're going to get into matches where the intent is to harm the other person, to win a match, now that is prohibited, because that is the world of anger. That is engaging in a very destructive act. That is violent. Violence also may have its place in protecting other, in survival. But in most expressions of violence in our society, why have we never heard of a Buddhist football league? The American land acquisition game, where there's all this pummeling and fighting for the ball. It's very violent, and the premise of it is very anger-filled. It's about divisiveness and plans and plays to deceive the other team. I don't need to describe it any further than that. All of you know what that's about. You'll never see a Buddhist football league or team. Right? Not because Buddhists are lazy and want to sit around and get fat. It's because of the state of mind it requires. The nurturing of that state of mind. Right? So that's what that chapter of the Lotus Sutra is actually about. Shakyamuni talks about hermaphrodites. Don't even associate with those people. You have to remind yourself that this is almost 3,000-year-old teachings. The nature of these activities at that time were a little different, but not all that different. A hermaphrodite is a kind of a euphemism. There are people, we call them intersex, that have various different qualities of genitalia. I don't think it's fair to call them hermaphrodites, because I think that when Shakyamuni was talking about it, he's also talking about people, young men, young boys, dressing themselves up as girls. He's not talking about their physical properties, in short. What he's talking about is all manner and variety of sexual enticements for the express purpose of offering you pleasures, intoxicants. This is why drugs and alcohol are prohibitions, right? Anything that alters the mind away from Buddha mind, it's evil. It's negative. It is something to abstain from. But at the same time, always the caveat, should one of these types of people come to you for the express purpose of learning how to change their karmic existence and be enlightened to the Dharma of the lotus flower, then it is incumbent upon you. You can't walk away from that. You can't associate with these people, but you can't walk away from them if they're seeking guidance on the way. And that prohibition is worded to say, well, you must try to help those people in the Dharma, all the while keeping your mind firmly focused on Buddha. Because the tripwire is there at any moment. Even, he says, you can't smile. You can't allow yourself in any way or form seen to be enjoying the company of this person. Your role is to lead them toward their higher self, their Buddha mind. And they may be starting from a very befouled point, but there's still Buddhahood within them. And to awaken that Buddhahood is your Bodhisattva mission. So you can't shirk that mission. But you don't go there voluntarily, because that's a seeking out of diminishment. You see the difference? I hope that's clear. Yeah, like I said, I did a whole series on Lotus lectures, and I'd be curious to see your opinions on that. I spoke it a long time ago. I have no idea what I said, but I'm very consistent in my understanding of Buddhism. That doesn't mean I don't slip up occasionally, and I would be interested if any of you watch the Lotus lectures. Some of you have already talked about them with me and thanked me for them. There's also a huge playlist for Nichiren's Gosho. So I invite you, go and pick around and choose, watch them all in order, whatever. I would like to know how those lectures were useful for you, or if they presented conundrums like this gentleman was discussing in this chapter, reading the Lotus Sutra, and this made him worry about what he was doing and how he should think about it. So absolutely I want to hear from you on that. Right? And I will do my best, as I did today. I pulled out all my various translations and pored over them, and I could see very clearly why he was asking and what an appropriate answer would be. With alacrity and accuracy, as best as I could muster, I gave him an answer. And I think on one level, it really relieved him to know my answer. The answer I provided for him anyway, through Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. And it also gave him something to ponder, shook him up a little bit. It wasn't my goal, but my goal is to transmit correctly the Buddha's intent and meaning. And sometimes that's very rewarding, and at other times it may shake up a lot of your thinking. But it is what it is. I'm not going to coddle it for anyone, right? So what I did do after talking to him, and I wrote all this down, I thought, well, this is a good document to answer. So I put it up on threefoldlotus.com as a button on that home/home.htm page with all these different questions and answers about core study materials. As the chapter 14, the prohibitions of chapter 14 of the Lotus Sutra. So you may look for that if you think that would be of interest. And I'd love to hear any comments you may have on that. And I guess that's it for today. Not a very long discussion, but I think this is something we can use as a template for all of our study in Buddhism. Always look from the perspective of Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, the Lotus Sutra Buddhism. I remember just scanning through titles of Nichiren's Gosho, just enlightening on one and thinking, yeah, what's that about? A lot of the titles are letter to so-and-so, it's hard to tell what it's about. So use the search. Use the search in the middle of the page there for this channel, not the YouTube search. Use this channel search for keywords, karma, prohibitions, chapter 14, Lotus lecture, whatever. Do a little hunting around, because we have close to 600 videos on this channel. So there's a lot of information here. So learn to be a little bit of a detective. You'll find it. And also, if you're more, the button clicker, the threefoldlotus.com website has a whole page under the heading of core study materials. Just dozens and dozens of green buttons with black print on them with, what is Daimoku? What's a Sangha? What's this and that? And you'll find these fairly brief documents, but with enough information. Some of them there's a good collection of scholarship that will be a discussion on that particular topic. Certainly a point of starting out where perhaps you might come up with some good specific questions as to your understanding even of those documents. That's how we'll fish out our particular path, right? So let's do that together. Namum Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you so much for your patronage, your watching. Remember, like, subscribe, and share. You may have a friend who's also looking into this stuff. And if you see something that's really excites you, and I hadn't thought about this before, share it with that friend. They may come back, and the two of you can have your own little Sangha communication about, what this means, how to do this better, and then questions, right? So let's keep that going. Our Sangha is important. It's growing slowly but mightily. We're all dedicated. And like I said earlier, download the podcast. You can listen to them while you're running on your treadmill or doing whatever. I look forward to hearing from you. Take good care of your health, especially these days. And be kind to yourself as well as others. All right? I'll see you in the next one.